Hey, what's up, everybody? We're back for another video this week. We are talking about kind of the future of Pokemon and what we want to see from the franchise with Switch 2 around the corner. And I know we've talked about it, good bit on the podcast here and there. Uh, you're not happy with Scarlet and Violet. You're pretty upset with the
Think they're arguably terrible. Well, it's the execution that's the problem, mainly with those games. Though I'm probably one of the few people that doesn't necessarily care for a fully open world Pokemon. If this is the way they're going to implement it, I don't care for it. I think the Legends Arceus works a lot better, or the older 2D style games just works better with how the world's sectioned off and stuff like that for game progression and stuff.
Do you think it's just that the Switch 1 couldn't handle the open world that Pokemon offer? Because you got to think like, yes, there was Breath of the Wild and Tears of the Kingdom, but with Pokemon, there were so many more things on screen at one time that
I mean,
maybe the system just couldn't handle.
if the system couldn't handle it, they should have done it a different way. They should have realized early on and probably done the more Arceus where it's more sectioned off, or
Yeah.
just do something a little bit more reasonable the hardware could handle. For me, the hardware issue is just it kind of performs really badly. Uh, I didn't necessarily like the structure of the open world because it really reminded me of what they did with Gen 2, where they wanted kind of an open world esque feel. But the problem is if you can go and do any gym bottle or I can't speak, gym boss, gym battle, whatever you want to call it, the level scaling has to be done appropriately. Because I assume Nintendo, from what I remember, it's been a few months since I played it. Once you start getting into like the higher levels, it just becomes kind of really trivial with some of the boss fights. It's just
Hmm.
super easy. Like you can just use one Pokemon to get the way through. Where most of the games where it's structured, you have to go to one gym after the next. It's very easy to scale your gym battles and keep the game fairly competitive unless you're going out of your way to grind out of it. So that was like the one thing that I ran into where it's just kind of like when we first had Gen 2, it's just it's kind of trivial. And if you want to get higher levels, the grind becomes a real pain unless you have like an Elite Four you can just do over and over and over again.
Yeah, I definitely get what you're saying. Like, I still enjoyed Scarlet and Violet, though it definitely has its issues performance wise. I think if those issues weren't there, there's a great game to be had. I'm on the different side of the fence where I always wanted an open world Pokemon. That's like what I dreamed of since I was a kid. That's what I always wanted, to be able to go anywhere and do anything at any time. And then Legends Arceus wasn't a full open world game. Like you said, it sectioned stuff off. So it had some um mobility there as far as not having as much performance issues as Scarlet and Violet had. And I think universally Legends Arceus is just loved. Like, you don't hear
Yeah.
anybody talk bad about that game. And I love that game. That game was phenomenal. And I feel like maybe, if they would have saw somewhere in development that, like, hey, the Switch can't handle this full open world with these Pokemon everywhere and all this stuff going on, that they would have went the route of like Legends Arceus. But I think it's gonna be a whole different story for Switch 2. I think they can take the lessons they learned from Scarlet and Violet, because if I remember correctly, I could be wrong. Scarlet and Violet was one of the lower selling Pokemon games. Like, sales had dropped down. I could be
I think
wrong,
so.
but it was the first Pokemon game, I think, where sales didn't escalate and go up like every single generation. And so, like, that was the trajectory of Pokemon. Each generation just kept selling more and more and more. Then Scarlet and
Yeah,
Violet
so
came
it
out.
it wasn't a lot, but I'm pretty sure as it stands fairly recently, Sword and Shield still has technically outsold Scarlet and Violet as of right now.
That's pretty crazy too. I mean,
I mean,
it's been
Scarlet and Violet
around
still is
longer.
like it still has outsold the entirety of the Sun and Moon, Ultra Sun and Moon, X and Y, the Black and White. Obviously, these are on handhelds and stuff like that, so it's still probably one of the best selling. It's like the third or fourth best selling gen just in terms of
Wow.
volume. But it's as much as I had issues with Sword and Shield, it still performed better. Plus the other issue with the open world game where Sword and Shield, not Sword and Shield, Arceus has that quasi narratively, it's very easy because you can say, "Hey, you gotta go to this area," and then more and more areas that are
Yeah.
kind of open, a quasi open world. It makes it easier to craft a narrative story when you have a full open world. It's a little bit trickier when you're kind of crafting
Yeah.
a narrative game, because you have to expect them to go anywhere, which is great for what a player can do, but it's
Mhm.
usually at the cost of a narrative direction, which Pokemon's never been like that top peak narrative story, but you
Sure.
saw what they could do with Arceus.
Yeah.
Uh, and even with the, Sun and Moon, Sword and Shield and stuff like that, there's still a cohesive story that you're
Mhm.
kind of following, even if it's kind of bare bones. I think Arceus really kind of went out there. It says Pokemon can be the same game it's always been and actually have a good narrative, that gets you all the way through the
Because it was a
game.
story-heavy
And that's where
game,
yeah, I think
for
that's where
Pokemon.
Scarlet and Violet hurts because it just feels like you can just there's no incentive to even pay attention to the story. You just kind of ignore it and just play the game. I
Which,
think the narrative's just weak to begin with. I immediately didn't care for the story of the game.
I mean, but that's kinda how I always play Pokemon, just kind of ignore the story and play the
Yeah,
game.
but you expect, like, when they're making that step, like, when you have a new game that makes that next step, you have a new baseline expectation.
Yeah.
I thought Sword and Shield started that next step. Arceus really took a step, and then it just was an immediate step backwards with Scarlet and Violet. Obviously, they both came out the same year,
Yeah.
but Arceus really raised the bar, and then it was a huge step backwards with Scarlet and Violet. I
Yeah.
think both the way the game was implemented mechanically
Mhm.
and the execution of the story. And I just thought, I just at times it feels like the world's just way too big and too empty
Yeah, it did
necessarily.
feel
Like
like
they could have
it did feel
shrunk the
too
world
empty at
down. Plus,
times.
it's like a big circle trying to get from point A to point B on some points of the map is extremely confusing
Yeah.
if you're still trying to learn the map. So I just think there's a lot of stuff that they need to take all the mistakes they made with this game and hopefully fix it on the next game. I mean, with the Switch 2, you'll have more power. If they want to stick with the full open world, that's fine, but there's a lot of improvements that need to come for it to
Yeah.
not feel like they're just trying to shove something out there to make a quick buck.
Yeah, I mean, I just don't think Switch is a platform that can technically handle open world games to that degree. I mean, you even look at Tears of the Kingdom and it has its issues as far as like frame rate drops and different things like that because
Oh, it's
too much is
bad.
happening on the screen. Like, you get sub 30 at certain points. It doesn't stay like that. And I would say like 90% of the time it's fine. But then you get those like weird frame drops, and it's like it takes you out of the experience. And like that's what Pokemon Scarlet and Violet did. And it was a little unfortunate because like the game itself, I really, really enjoyed. I thought it was really cool. They expanded it with the DLC with more story and more to do and more areas with Area Zero. So like they had full intentions on, supporting this game for a long time. And it just kind of stinks that, it turned out the way that it did. But I think do you think that the Legends series, because we know we're getting Legends ZA, do you think that's going to be an ongoing series that we're going to continually get?
It's what it feels like right now, where they're
Yeah,
going back, revisiting older generations, but you're not stuck with, say, remaking the game. You're adding a whole new spin, a
sure.
whole new world where you can kind of be more creative, whether it's in the past, you can get a little bit more narratively creative, and you're just not tied down to just reimagining a world that we've kind of already had.
Yeah.
Because you already had it with like Gen 1. It's happened like three times. You have the original, like, red, green, blue, yellow. You got
Hmm.
the Let's Go, the most recent, but you had the fire red, leaf green, and stuff like that. You're
Yeah.
not just stuck trying to like recreate something. You can full on build a whole new world, whole new
Sure.
narrative. And whether it actually ties into the other game, it's not really relevant. You can reimagine a generation, bring in different Pokemon from other
Hmm.
generations, get a new spin on them, and just be the flexibility to do something that's wholesale new is
Yeah.
really good. And I think with the way the Arceus was received, and especially if ZA is received well, I think it's going to be an ongoing thing. That's probably going to, be that in between generations is what it feels like. They're trying to stagger out the games.
Yeah, for sure. And I'm definitely excited to see what happens with ZA because you see that they're going more into the city now versus like the countryside. So like there's some other stuff that's going on as far as like the backstory of the game. And then also like the
Yeah,
biggest thing is that we never really got like full story for Zygarde. So it'd be really cool to see what comes of that because the only
because it
story you
got
ever
shoved
got,
into
the anime.
Sun and Moon, and it's yeah, because it got shoved into Sun and Moon, and that's not really a big Pokemon in that game for the most part.
No, the you only got backstory for Zygarde in the anime, which was apparently canon. So like I had to actually go back and seek it out to figure out about this Pokemon because I was like very confused. It's like a very menacing, very like it looks like a Pokemon that has some sort of meaning and is important, but like in the game they didn't make it that way. So which is kind of a bummer. But I guess do you think that we'll get a return of the Let's Go games at all?
I don't know, because I mean, it makes sense. It came out at the time where the Pokemon Go was a thing, and it's
Yeah.
kind of hard tied into that. I I'm sure there's people out there that want it. I, for one, would be fine if they just didn't revisit it at all.
Yeah.
If I were gonna read, if we're gonna revisit older generations, just let me play those older games as is, or the remakes of the older games. I don't want a whole Let's Go because it's really simplified the game down to just throw on Pokeballs at Pokemon, and then you battle the trainers. It just strips the RPG elements that Pokemon's always had when
It
it comes to
makes it like a
battling,
simpler
leveling.
game. The only reason I wanted to
Yeah.
see a Let's Go happen again is because Johto region is my favorite region. I love, Gold, Silver, Crystal. I really wanted to see them visit that, and I like the Let's Go games. I played both of 'em. I played Let's Go Eevee and Pikachu, and yes, it's very simplified. It's kind of dumbed down, but for something different, when I still know I'm getting my core Pokemon game, it didn't really matter that much to me because I knew that I was still getting that core game. So it was like an extra bonus.
Yeah, but you also have to realize, I mean, it sold well. It sold just over 15 million copies, but you got to think, Let's Go came out in 2018.
Yeah.
In
And we
like
haven't gotten
7
one.
years since then.
Yeah.
I feel like if we were gonna get another one, they would have given it to us already.
Yeah.
And it just seems like that only came out to just help Pokemon Go and to capitalize on that craze when it first came out, and they never really cared to do anything else after that. It's what it's
Yeah.
starting to look like.
Now, are there any Pokemon spin-off series that you want to see return on the Nintendo Switch too?
I mean, outside of all of them, I
Because
mean,
there's
technically
tons of
there's a few.
spin-offs.
I don't think we're ever gonna get the trading card game to come back because,
Probably
well,
not.
there's already now 2 mobile versions
Yeah.
where you can play the card game and
Yeah.
stuff like that. So I think that's taken the place of it, and I think it fits better on a mobile platform anyways. I mean, Pokemon Snap, we got a new one back in 2021. Who knows if they're gonna do another one, but that's like a fun game, but it's really simple and it didn't really sell all that well. I think it sold right around 2.4 million copies, which is not a whole lot.
Not a lot. Yeah.
Realistic, I don't think I feel like we were gonna get another Pokemon or a Coliseum game. We would have gotten it by now. That just feels like those are like a lot of these games are just kind of done at best. I think there's probably two series that have the best chance to come back. The Mystery Dungeon only because they did the whole DX one back in
Yeah.
2020 for the Switch, so they're flirting with that. And I think that's probably the biggest spinoff with the most games that we've had.
Yeah.
Because what is it?
Yeah. It's a long running series.
About 7 different games in
Yeah.
that series. The only other one that would probably make sense that it feels like there's a hardcore fan following of would be the Pokemon Ranger games.
I was about to say
Like,
that. That's the
obviously,
one I
for
want to see
a lot of
return the
series,
most.
not the best selling. It's one of the better selling spin-offs, but it just feels like it's
We
probably
only
one of the
got
better games.
we've only gotten 2 entries in the series, and it feels like, it would
No,
do
we got
well.
three for it.
Did we get
So you had Ranger,
Shadows?
you have Shadows, and then you had Guardian.
Oh, that's right. I forgot about
They
that,
were all
okay.
three on the DS, but yeah. The only problem is they sequentially sold less and less copies,
Yeah.
unfortunately.
Yeah, that sucks. I love those games. I thought they were fantastic. I would love to see that return. I think Pokemon Mystery Dungeon's probably a given because those sell well, and dungeon games in Japan, those mystery dungeon games, because that's like a it's not just Pokemon Mystery Dungeon. There's a whole bunch of the mystery dungeon games. That's like a whole genre in Japan. Like there's a bunch
Yeah.
tons of them, tons. So like it'll definitely sell. And I always enjoyed the ones that I played. I haven't played every single one of them, but I think of like the 7 that there are, I think I probably played 5 of them and have them. And I really enjoyed those two. They're definitely a completely different type of game. They're pretty fun. Um, I it's probably not going to happen, but I would love to see like either a sequel to like Pokemon XD Gale of Darkness, where it was a very story heavy game, like it was intentionally made to be a story game. It wasn't about catching the Pokemon, like it had a whole backstory of, I really really liked that, and I thought it was really cool, and it was different. It was on the GameCube. It was like just entirely different than at the time we had seen, you know, anything like that for Pokemon. But I would love to see like a because we got a few games that were like it, but I would love to see like a Pokemon Stadium 3. We got like for instance, Pokemon Coliseum. But we also got Pokemon Battle Revolution for the Wii, which was basically Pokemon Stadium. So it was like basically 3D fights. It was,
Yeah.
take your fights in 3D and like that's really the gimmick of it was you've been playing these games 2D, now let's see it in 3D. That was kind of the premise of it. But I would love to see like another iteration of it doesn't have to be a Pokemon Stadium 3, but something of like that. Like I was super excited when Battle Revolution came out. I thought that was really, really cool. And to see those fights in 3D and it was a little bit different. Um, I would love to see something like that return because it would look much better, perform much better on the Switch 2. It would definitely sell it to Pokemon. But I mean, there's I think about like even something as simple as like Pokemon Trotsy or Pokemon Puzzle League or like things like that, where we used to just get all kinds of Pokemon spinoffs, right? Like
Yeah.
I would love to see the resurgence of Pokemon spinoffs, period. Like give us some other stuff in between, like these core games, because we used to get a ton of it. And you know, we still get, a good chunk of Pokemon stuff, but it's just not the same. We don't have the same outputting of video games that we used to for Pokemon. But I think that the Switch 2 will be kind of the savior for the core franchise as far as like Scarlet and Violet goes. I think that those problems probably won't happen again because it'll be a big deal. It was already a big deal. They saw a decline in sales. Nintendo was on them. Game Freak was, Game Freaks
Yeah, but
involved, the
those
Pokemon
games
company.
still sold
They
well
still
over
sold well,
still sold over
yeah.
20,000,000. So
But
that's the only problem of, like, how much of an incentive is there really to actually try to fix the problem?
but I think with the Switch 2, like it's gonna fix a lot of those performance problems, which are the biggest problems of Pokemon Scarlet and Violet, I would say. Um, I mean, those are
The glaring issues.
yeah, the glaring issues of it. I mean, it had some other problems here and there and stuff like that, but it was definitely I think it was shooting for the stars and it just couldn't reach with the platform that it was on, unfortunately. But yeah, I guess we'll have to see, what comes of Pokemon here in the coming months. We should have a when do we normally have our Pokemon Direct? Isn't it next month or this month?
I'm
Is
not
it
sure.
normally like February? Might have to look it up real quick, but I think it's in February, the Pokemon Direct. So we should be getting some news on what's coming here soon. So I
Yeah,
definitely
so Pokemon Day falls on February 27th, so it'll
okay.
be the end of the month.
Yeah, so the end of the month we should know a little more on what's going on, maybe what's coming up, and I don't think we're probably going to see anything that's announced for Switch 2 until that Switch Direct, but there might be some stuff in between. You never know. And then might get some new Pokemon TCG Pocket news, like, whatever the next set is or something like that. And definitely looking forward to seeing what happens with Pokemon on the Switch 2 and kind of the future of everything. So, any final thoughts, Mark?
I think we pretty much summed it up. It's, at this point, we're just kinda waiting to see more about ZA, and I think that's gonna show the direction that Pokemon wants to kinda move forward in the future.
Yeah, yeah. So hope for the best. Be sure to subscribe. It definitely helps us out. We'll have some videos coming up in the future. I got a list of things that I want to do, so stay tuned, and we'll see you all later. Peace.
Peace out, everybody.